Welcome to episode 483 of the Barcelona podcast, brought to you by the Blue Wire Podcast Network. I'm Hilton, and happy preseason. And help me fill the airways with optimism, of course. Nothing but optimism for the first day of the preseason is Adam from BarcaBreakdown and the news aggregator Barça Buzz. Welcome to the show, Adam.
Thank you, Dan. I am indeed optimistic, so I'm excited for that intro.
It's also, though, Adam, I have to say, a weird time of the year with the first team preseason training starting, where there are 30 first team players and a bunch of academy kids. Some of the regulars are still away after international duties, and quite a bunch will dip out of these 30 players. Of course, it's a 25-player squad, and even last year, I believe they started at 23. And with Vitor Roque potentially on the way in January, I wouldn't be surprised if they want to start this season with 24. And just fill him in later or try to register, depending. And again, depending on registration, they could literally have 30 players in their first team they're paying the wages for on the wage bill, but they could also only register 22 players. Like, there is a world, we're going to call that almost a worst case scenario, but not to be too pessimistic, but there's a worst case scenario where they have 30 players they're paying and 22 that they've been able to register. So again, the hope, though, is that some of those in this 30 will dip out and get a big move. So, it's a big time, I want to say, in the season for those news aggregators like a Barça Buzz, of course, but a weird time for people who do one or two podcasts a week, I'd say, Adam. It's a weird time for people to figure out what is real news, what is fake, and what is the thing that you're actually holding on to, because who the heck is going to be in the squad? We really don't know.
Totally. And I think it's been pretty quiet the last few weeks, and I think the Goulet transfer drama has kind of made that more on the top of the mind of, I think, the people inside the club. But you haven't heard a lot about Dest, Lenglet, Fermin, Torres, possibly Ansu, like a lot of the possible exits this summer that were being considered a lot more heavily when Messi was still on an agenda topic. They've really died down, and so it is a little bit of a weird time for us to not know who's going to stay, who's going to go. Do you have any thoughts about which of those kind of bigger marquee exits are going to happen or not?
I think I cried a lot about Ansu, and I said that I thought he was gone. I thought because of the way that the news story, not even about his dad, but just about the way that it seemed like the club was really trying to force him out based on the wages. I don't see how they've made that up or figured that out yet, unless Frankie de Jong has a wage reduction that we don't know about that he's already agreed to, but I don't see that coming. But it seems like, the Ansu stuff has died down to a point now in the middle of July that I just cannot see that happening now, right? Like, you feel like any saga, because that's a saga player, not even his wages, but just to get him, there's no way that in July 10th, if a team has not moved for him yet, for a huge number, you're talking 70 million or 50 million if Barca are that desperate, that they're not going to have some kind of, long negotiation about the add-ons and any percent of a future sale. Because again, if a club buys him outright, it's going to be a large percentage of the future sale that Barca is going to want. Because again, he's an academy kid for them, who's also only 20 years old, right? So it's like they're not going to make that deal. And if they're going to make that deal, that's going to have to, I don't know, I feel like they're going to have to start. That's not going to be a deadline day thing for him. And then the others, I said, Fermin, he said he wants to stay put now. And I think the club at the moment, I try to say this too. If you see on 9, there are pictures of Matteo Alemany or Deco, those people, I know they have their, we'll say, minions underneath them, but they're only one person with maybe 3 cell phones, but also only one voice, right? Only one train of thought, even if they're multitasking. So if this week they were working on the Vitor Roque thing and they're always on the phone, negotiating, getting that deal done, well, we know what they were doing this week. That's what they were doing this week. And now this coming week, because I think that's why about the news aggregators, you might see or feel like there's a news dump on Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday. Because now that maybe Vitor Roque is done, Gundogan is done, Inigo Martinez is done. So now it's time to get on the phone and hash out all the details after putting out those feelers to Tottenham or something like that. So let's go through some of those names in particular. The official list for today, as in to start of the first team training. The first team is Eric Garcia, Rafinha, Iñaki Peña, Ferran Torres, Nico Gonzalez, Inigo Martinez, Roberto, Pedri, Ronald Araujo, Balde, Pablo Torre, Alonso, Lenglet, and Serginho Dest. The youth team, Marc Casado, Lamine Yamal, Pau Prim, Fai, Pau Cubarsi, G, Pedrola, Unai Hernandez, Fermin Lopez, and I've also seen Hector Fort there too. Not everyone's reporting that, but I've literally seen a picture of him, so he's definitely there. It's funny because with the kids, I don't have too much to say about them, but it is again that time of the year where I look over the young players and go, oh yeah, that kid is going to he's going to do something to prove something. And then next week, the adults are going to show up again, and then we learn our lesson. So usually it's his first week, though, that we are told, as was the case with Pedri and Gabi and Ansu, this kid who you thought wasn't in the first team dynamic will be in the first team dynamic, whether he's 16, 17, 18, 19, I'm just looking at the list again, or 20 in the case of Collado. So all these players are 16 to 20. There's not even a 21, 22, 23-year-old. That's the case of Dest and Julian Araujo when he eventually joins potentially. And I mean, Pedri and Gabi obviously are where they're at age-wise, but these are really young kids. So this is one of those rare years where I'm going to say maybe Collado, because if they don't sign a pivot, maybe he gets a spot if Nico's going out on loan. But everybody else there, we know where Lamine Yamal, I think, is going to fit in the first team dynamic. He'll get his minutes at some point this year. But other than that, I think it's a lot of Xavi saying, hey, you are the most talented players of the future. I want to see you in the next 2 to 3 seasons. We'll see where that comes. But, hey, we need some bodies right now.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I mean, I think over the last few years, we've seen so many young talents kind of get their time in the limelight. And we see Balde, who, basically a year ago, no one thought there's a chance he's going to be an out-and-out starter for the whole season, just emerge as a huge force and like the player I think me and most Barca fans are most excited to see continue to grow this season. And so it is a little bit of I mean, that's where the excitement comes from, right? Like, I understand there's pessimism about, some of the signings we don't getting robbed by Real Madrid, but there is just so much potential for this Barca team. I would like to see a little bit more of players on the team who are like the 24 to 30 age bracket, right? I was even listening to you talking about player of the season, thinking about Pedri or Ter Stegen or Lewandowski, and like that's such a big age gap there that I do wish we were able to get a few more players in that middle late 20s range to help show, give us some experience on the team. But overall, I'm excited about the youth players getting a shot, and we'll see who Xavi goes with, right? I think there's a narrative around the team that Xavi doesn't give enough opportunities to some of the youth, right? Pablo Torre last season was the big one where everyone was asking, especially, once the league was locked up and we were out of the Copa, where's Pablo Torre? And so it's an exciting time, and I hope Xavi does continue to foster the growth of some of these younger players.
I mean, the youth stuff, I couldn't get there. I mean, I see the same things that people see in Pablo Torre. It's not a knock on Pablo Torre. I just like at some point, I mean, like Gabi still has so much work to do and so many things to improve upon. And I think especially the younger the fan winds up being the problem. Like, not to say that I'm some old hat in his early 30s, but I will say that when it comes to young players, even a Gabi, just because they've been around 3 months doesn't make them a veteran. Even if they've been around now a season, doesn't make them a veteran. I mean, the way that it's always interesting and telling to me the way that Xavi talks about Pedri, because he talks about Pedri like a young player. He talks about him as a player that he has expectations for, and he wants to improve upon these things, and he sees his game developing in a way that, for Marcos Alonso, he'll answer questions about him, and basically it's Xavi defending Marcos Alonso and saying, hey, I think he actually has the tools that are good enough to be in this position, because he doesn't expect Marcos Alonso to add something to his game in the way that he knows. I mean, Xavi knows and is telling you, this player is the future, this player needs to add this. And when you have Balde and you have Araujo, and that being Ronald Araujo, with the ball at his feet in particular, and even Koundé, who's 24, like you have all of these different players who Xavi is looking to add something to, as well as fitting Lewandowski and Christensen and who else would we add? Or, well, Kessie. Actually, I mean, that's, I think, one of the reasons why Kessie didn't play a lot was because Lewandowski was new, Rafinha was new, Christensen was new, and Kessie was new. So just throwing all these teams together, as much as we like to play Football Manager with, I mean, all, it's not just Barcelona. It's Real Madrid, it's PSG, it's Manchester United, it's Manchester City, it's Liverpool. As much as everybody wants to say, hey, there's 5 new players to potentially be in the first team or to be in the starting lineup, it's difficult to put 5 of 12 or 11 new faces on the field together at the same time and have that work out. So that's why if you profile a player like Inigo Martinez, it excites nobody. Like I even last year had a show about Christensen, only Christensen, but I mean, I haven't decided yet if I'm going to have a whole show on Inigo Martinez because I don't know if people are going to listen to that. Like, as much as it'd be fun for athletic club supporters who might support both or might listen to me, I don't know how many of the 8 of you there are, but I don't know how many people are like really pining for what is 32-year-old Inigo Martinez going to bring to FC Barcelona. I'm not sure the answer to that. But on the other side of that, another center back, to go back to the youth for just a second, I want to, just talk about 2 guys in particular, give a little more detail on them. Pau Cubarsi is a 2007 born center back. He is 16 years old and the youngest player to participate in the first team, alongside Lamine Yamal, of course, who is a few days or a week or 2 younger. Lamine Yamal turned 16 this week. So expect his contract to be extended this week as well. He would not be in first team training if they did not have that one almost ready for a signature, by the way. So that is some good news. And by that, Cubarsi also extended his contract this week. And in that contract, it may have included that he was going to do first team training right now. Like that's an easy little write in there as a guarantee for that to happen. Cubarsi plays technically with Juvenil Bay, which is the U18s, and already made his youth team debut for just one game when he was 15. And I would expect him this year to play with the U19s. That's as a 16-year-old, the same way that Lamine Yamal, Ansu Fati, Angel Alacan, and Gabi did, which is pretty good company in terms of 6 years. Iles Moriba did as well. So it's not entirely on. Well, I want to say it's not 100%, but he also made his debut for the first team at 18. So it's not like his debut or busting into the first team was not halted by him at all. It was the choices he made after he was in the first team. And then and the other one to name is Fermin Lopez, a 20-year-old attacking midfielder, played in 40 games for Linares in the third division last season. But the big numbers for him is he scored 12 goals and 4 assists. And even in the third division, as an attacking midfielder, scoring 12 goals and 4 assists is pretty good numbers for a player that actually in his first year with Juvenil Bay, the U18s, he was a complete wash because he was undersized, to say the least. And when I say undersized, I mean smaller than Ricky Puig at 16. He was very undersized to a point where you didn't know if he was going to continue to be professional or ever become a professional footballer. And now he's 20, has really found his footing, and I with confidence can say, if you scored 12 and 4 in the third division, you're going to have a career somewhere. It's where? It's at the first division, it's at second division, hopefully it's higher than the third division, and likely in Spain for a player like that as well, for Fermin Lopez, where, again, his size will not be held against him in any way for these Spanish clubs. So those are just two players that, I don't know, I'm interested just to hear, as weird as it is, Hector Fort. Like, I've never heard Xavi say something about him. So I'm interested to hear in training if, in these extended week before the other internationals in Frankie de Jong and Gundogan and everyone else shows up next week, I want to hear what reporters ask about, this kid or that kid, and kind of hear Xavi's impression, hopefully outside of like, hey, he's young. If he's good enough, he's young. If he's young enough, he's good enough. And, we're excited about him. And I actually want to hear Xavi say a few things about like, what is he excited about with this group in particular? Because there's a reason why there are not as many Barca Athletic players like normal, or even other U19 players. Like this is legitimately a group of U18 players, and in some cases U16 players that are playing and training with the first team. So it's an interesting group in a way that normal preseason is not. That's just filling out the numbers. This is actually like the next generation.
Yeah, totally. And I think that's where our team kind of is, right? I mean, it kind of honestly all of it comes back to the beginning talk about like optimism versus pessimism. And I think there's just a lot of fans who aren't ready to accept like a growing phase in the team. But this is the exact development that I would say between 2017 and 2020 we were all yearning for, in seeing the team really look to the future, right? And you even think back to last season, we're getting some younger center backs to training this week. It's like, last year we had PK, we had Eric Garcia, we had so many options, and then you see us, lose to Bayern, lose to Inter Milan when Araujo's out or when Christensen gets hurt. And so building up the youth is what we've all been clamoring for. And so it's something where I feel like the fans have to manage expectations and understand that we're a team going through a huge rebuild phase, right? And especially with, I feel like we have a lot of gray area players who I can't really get a good grasp if they're going to be they're going to have injury issues for, every single season, or if we're just some fluke things. But right, Pedri, we've seen a lot of. Gavi, we see Dembele, of course, and Araujo himself, has had a lot of injury issues. And so building up that youth, especially when we don't have the opportunity to go out there and spend a lot of money in the transfer window, is exactly what we need. And that also, connects to why everyone's so excited about Gundogan, is just that ability to give Gavi, to give Pedri rest, and not have, the full burden of the team during these big crazy weeks when we have, La Liga, Champions League, La Liga. It's so good for us.
I also want to always remind people, if Cubarsi winds up raising the Champions League trophy as a starting center back for Barcelona at the age of 24, the year, real quick, doing the math, will be 2032. And
it's crazy,
right? Like I'll be a 40-year-old man. Like that's all that's going to be, right? And that's, if that kid is 24 as a starting center back for Barcelona raising the trophy, he might even have to wait till he's 27 to, be the out and out starter. Or likely, if again, a lot of those players at that age and who've been with the academy, they become the starters or they don't, right? Or they move on. So I'd say, yeah. But again, if he's 24 and is a starting center back. Like the year is still 2032. So relax on those
Yeah.
kind of players. Like we got to wait a minute. And even then, like it's so funny because a player will kind of break on the scene and then a year or two will go by. In the case I'm talking now next about Serginho Dest, Nico Gonzalez, Abde, and Collado, that you blink and you're like, okay, now they're 21, 22, 23, 24 in the case of Collado, going to be 25. And it's like, okay, like now they have to continue to move on with their career, and they've kind of come through and gone. I'm not saying for those players, because I think Abde is clearly still on the rise, clearly still improving. And I think
100%.
Nico's the same. Like he's still just 21. So in the case of Collado, Lenglet, Dest, Nico, Abde, who is staying, or are all five gone? And
well, I think
the only caveat I'm adding here is that Lenglet is the interesting one because he might be staying based on, like, we're not just talking about good enough to stay. Like, I'm rephrasing that question. I don't just mean good enough Xavi's going to use them. I mean, are they going to be on the Barcelona wage bill this coming year of those five?
Well, I mean, I think the things we saw today, Collado, he's probably going to Real Betis. That seemed like it's really heating up. I feel so bad on that case because you talk about youth players you're excited about who have to leave. He really got screwed. I think it was in 2021 where he had to take like 6 months off. He wasn't with the first team, and that really hampered his growth. So I think he's going to Betis. Serginho Dest, I'm a little bit more unclear about. I mean, I'm an American myself, and so I'm always rooting for Serginho Dest, but his expel at AC Milan didn't go that well. I mean, I think Lenglet, it looks pretty clear he's going to go to Tottenham, right? There were rumors today that we gave him like an extra 8 or so days off for not reporting to training, and I think that's because there's an assumption there that he'll be leaving the team. So I think all three were going to find their way out this summer, but the rumors are not heating up. And Dest in particular, I'm worried he's just going to kind of fall into no man's land. I haven't heard any interest from any teams. What do you think?
Well, Lenglet, you want to talk about irony? There is this world where you could see Lenglet sitting in the stands next to another left-footed center back in Inigo Martinez, because if Lenglet doesn't get moved and Tottenham says no, and then no other club wants to take his wages on, and Barca can't move him, then he's sitting in the stands because they couldn't move him. And Inigo Martinez is sitting next to him because they won't be able to register Inigo Martinez unless they move Lenglet. So there's a world where both of these left-footed center backs are sitting in the stands next to each other for two entirely different reasons. And that is the irony that I am not on social media for. I don't want to be there on that kind of day for that image. And I would actually, the only thing I would ask of the two of them is if that were to happen, they don't sit next to each other. You have to have the other injured players or other players in between them and sit on the opposite side so they're not.
Yeah, the optics are not good.
No. But I was also conspiracy Dan, just a nibble of this. They are playing that being Tottenham and Barcelona in the Gamper Trophy this year.
Yep.
So maybe that was the last part of the negotiation. And if Barca is picking their Gamper Trophy opponent based on trying to get Lenglet's wages off the books, is, again, the most 2023 Barcelona thing I could possibly think of.
It's such a shame, too. He had such a bright first 2 seasons at Barca, and then just became kind of how I feel Eric Garcia is, just some high-profile bonehead moves, and so that one really makes me sad. I mean, a lot of these players, I don't know how you feel, but I get an emotional attachment to them, separate from their performances, kind of. And so, yeah, I'm a little bit sad that things are going down this route, but let's see. I mean, I've been impressed so far, right, with how Laporta has managed everything since his new presidency. Deco is doing a good job, and so I have faith in the club. I mean, I'm an eternal optimist with Barca, so I have a lot of faith that we're going to get the moves we need, even if we're not hearing the rumors all the time that I think some fans are yearning for.
Yeah, apparently Barca did pay the rest of Collado's contract to help him get out of it, but his number was less than 2.5 mil. So I think when it comes to, and when I say percentage, so they're playing a percentage of 2.5 mil. So he
gave up some.
You're talking maybe 400K. But again, the point is that gets reported that is happening because it's Barcelona and you're talking about their finances. Anything related to their finances is going to be reported. So when you say that they paid a portion of his, that number is way different than the number that they paid Samuel Umtiti for the termination of his contract. That's a different thing. And as you said, probably to Real Betis, which is interesting too, that he's going to Real Betis, because that does tell you the state of where Real Betis is in right now. No disrespect to Collado, but as you mentioned, 2020 was a rough year for him, missing time because once COVID was shut down, that was the year when you were going to see Ricky Puig and Collado breaking from Barca B into the first team. It never happened. It shuts down. And then that third division took a while to even start up again, and Barca's first team was full because everybody had time to rest and everybody was healthy coming out of that COVID break, except for Ansu, of course. And then Collado winds up missing that time. You mentioned he was supposed to go out on loan, doesn't happen. He's waiting around until January, so he missed a lot of time. But the reason why Real Betis wants to bring him in is not as much as that they probably profile and would love to have him. But obviously, he was one of Elche's, maybe their best player last year in his defense as well. Like, he is good enough for the first division in Liga, and Real Betis might even be the ceiling of where he belongs. But Real Betis is a club that financially, they are one of the clubs in the Liga on razor-thin signing margins as well. And Collado is the perfect, when I say kind of player, I mean the kind of player that can fit in their wage structure financially, that he will fit perfectly into what they need. And Nico is a very, as we kind of talk about him, because as you said, I have nothing to add on Dest. I think the club wants to get rid of him. It's weird because his wages aren't that, they're not grossly high. They're manageable for other clubs, and it's weird to me for anybody to see him be a starter for the U.S. at the World Cup, see him be a starter for the U.S. in international competitions. And I know not every manager is watching everybody, but I mean, there's only so many under 24 right backs where so what, he's not good enough for Barca and City and United or even AC Milan to be their right back. But they were pretty good. They were fighting for the Scudetto last year. So I think in the case of Dest, there's got to be someone just underneath that category, right? Where you're talking about Real Betis or even Newcastle, where I'm going to still put them until they prove it. Otherwise, I'm going to put them in that same echelon, or West Ham, or someone in that caliber has to still be looking at Dest. And I think he only makes like 5.5 or 6.5 mil a year. So it's not crazy. And then Nico, I want you to talk about Nico here because I get the same sense with Nico that he has a contract and wages that are very advantageous for the clubs. The deal he signed with Barcelona was very club friendly in terms of his wages. And that's why Valencia was able to afford him last year. Like, that's what Valencia was doing. They're just like, who can we afford? And that's why they almost got relegated. So this coming year, I think it'll be very similar, where other clubs, I think, would love to have a player who, yes, he's still growing, but I think other teams would love to have a player that they can easily afford, especially around Spain, because I think he would probably stay in Spain. I believe that. I'm not sure if he knows too much English or how that transition would be for him if he wants to continue on in Spain. But I don't know. It's tough for Nico. I think Kessie. It's weird because Kessie is right. That's really the revolving door plus a pivot. If there is no pivot coming and Kessie is sold, there are minutes for Nico because Pablo Torre is probably on loan as well. So I don't hear about Gundogan's arriving, but I don't hear about another midfielder as well. It sounds like the six are the six, and in this case, Nico would be the sixth. And Kessie or Pablo Torre, he got a few minutes, but I think Nico gets a few more minutes than Pablo Torre did.
Yeah, I mean, I think the huge kind of dark hole for how this whole summer continues is just whether or not we get another pivot, right? Whether Oriel comes from Girona or, what other options we have out in the market. I mean, I could certainly see Nico sliding in and getting quite a few minutes for, this Barca side, especially, again, with how much we saw that the wear and tear of the season, and especially Xavi's style in that first 6 months before the World Cup, how much it wore down, and the World Cup itself wore down our players. We need a revolving door of players, because as much as you hate to say it, we do have injury-prone midfielders, and we do need people to come in and play some minutes. And we do, of course, have the captain, Sergio Roberto, who always has a chance, but I think most of us don't really want to see Sergi play too much in the midfield this coming season. And so Nico, there was always talks, I think, especially during the Koeman era, he had a few chances to shine as a pivot, and he could be used there. It's still, I'm still up in the air. I don't really know. What do you think? Do you think Xavi's going to be playing this box midfield or going more to a 4-3-3 next season? I mean, depending on how Xavi wants to orchestrate next season and our ability to get in a CDM, that really just will change how we view all of these players.
Yeah, it's interesting because for Valencia, he was kind of the backup, that being Nico. He was a backup right interior in a 4-3-3, and then he was also the backup pivot for Valencia. Again, they also, prior to him moving to Villarreal, Daniel Parejo kind of played as their pivot. They don't really have necessarily a pivot. They kind of have all three midfielders defend together kind of as his unit, and that being Valencia, and they kind of they bring their fullbacks in quite a bit to try to help defend, and then they spray them out to the wings. I mean, almost like a like a butterfly coming out of a cocoon is a lot what like the Valencia attack is supposed to be built like, and it doesn't always obviously it doesn't always work out like a beautiful butterfly being Valencia's attack. So I don't know, the interesting thing for Nico is if Xavi does continue, as you say, to play that box midfield, which I think very well could happen. I mean, that's Gundogan is brought in and seems like a player who would perfectly profile into playing for midfielders if you had a pivot where it's either Gundogan and Pedri up top, or it's Pedri and Gabi, I think Gundogan's rotated, or, you know, two of the three are always going to be available to play up top. And then again, it's Frankie de Jong, and then who else behind? And the tough thing is, I think if you actually flip the field, because Nico isn't all right foot, but he's generally pretty right-footed in his ability to build up and kind of make those line-breaking passes. He doesn't do very often. He's kind of not the player that he was when he was younger, which is always that weird thing. He was always an attacking midfielder, and he's not that player anymore. And not to call him a box-to-box midfielder, but he is not really a pivot. He's not really an attacking midfielder. And he isn't necessarily an Arturo Vidal like box-to-box runner either. He is this system player that fits in a pressing system, and I think would fit defensively really, really well in for Xavi. But offensively, with Barcelona having the ball, if it was all reversed, as in you move that connector role that Pedri plays, where instead of numerically strong-siding your left side, and then you get it over to Pedri, who then has to get it to Dembele in the 1v1 situations, or Rafinha in 1v1 situations. Instead of strong-siding left, if you strong-sided your right side, I think that maybe Nico would be a little more comfortable in the Frankie de Jong role there, if that makes any sense. Where you flip that, instead of de Jong on the left, it'd be Nico on the right. There we go. Instead of de Jong on the left, it'd be Nico on the right, in like behind that connector. Because I think that is really where Nico thrives, just protecting that real, you know, intelligent player right in front of him to make that final ball the way that Pedri can do, and to help out defend for Dembele or Pedri on the right side. But again, in that system as Xavi's running, that position on the right is that pivot, not the controller type that de Jong is, right? So, and then like de Jong and Nico together in a double pivot doesn't work, in the same way that Kessie and de Jong doesn't work, in the same way that I believe de Jong and Gundogan is not going to work as a double pivot. And so I wonder where Nico is and where he would fit in for Xavi at his best. It's a weird thing where it's like in the pressing system, he fits so well, and he's a Barca player. You see it and it makes sense. But to me, he actually winds up profiling as a not as good Gabi based on the roles that they have. And it's like, if you have Gabi, then you actually probably don't need Nico, because those minutes are now going to be eaten up by Gundogan or de Jong, or, you know, again, if you have a pivot, then now there's just too many midfielders in there. But again, at the moment, if they sell Kessie, then it's going to be Nico. And there's this weird thing where it's like the club needs to sell Kessie for that number because it came for a free transfer, and they need not even to get his wages off, but his wages are like, they're high for a bench player and they're not high for a starter. So if Kessie is a starter, his wages I think are like 9.5 or 10, like fine. But as a bench player, like you cannot, he makes too much. Like you got to move him off the books. But then does that mean like Nico comes in as that sixth? I mean, maybe, or maybe you just go Alex Collado and whoever else is down there in the U19 to the Barca Athletic. I mean, maybe they are next up. Maybe that's why it's Unai Hernandez and Enes Collado, and, you know, who's going to be that player that's going to play once every 10 games. You know what I mean? Like the why we
I mean, with Kessie, I mean, that's just like, I think we were all hoping, like, where's the Saudi Arabian bids that are coming in for all these players? He's the perfect candidate. But I really think he's going to stay with the team. And like you said, I mean, Nico could fit on that right side, but just the way our offense has moved under Xavi, and the way Balde has exploded as like an offensive force, his dribbling, his crossing really improved in the last like 3 months of the season. You know, it's not really going to happen. And so Nico, I think, will end up being the odd man out, and I don't think we'll get rid of Kessie this summer, just based off what I've already seen.
Well, I mean, I saw Nico in person as the pivot at Red Bull Arena, and I was convinced. I was like, I don't see why not. He couldn't have backed up Busquets last season, but yet that idea just seems like it's not happening. I mean, not to say he didn't prove it at Valencia, but Valencia weren't in a position to let him prove it either. And I just don't think at Barcelona he's ever going to have the opportunity to earn the pivot position. I just don't see how that happens based on.
But this would be the summer, right, where he would have that chance. I mean, if things don't roll our way with the transfers out, I mean, I've seen crazier things happen with players getting a moment, and yeah, I think we just got to see how the die roll.
I mean, we all got to strap in because truthfully, there's no way, and I hate this, but there's no way that Xavi doesn't play Roberto as his break glass in case of emergency double pivot over. No way. There's no way he plays Nico over Sergio Roberto in his break glass in case of emergency double pivot situation, because Roberto is. I mean, even if they bring in a pivot, Roberto is still probably your Copa del Rey defensive midfielder like pivot. So sorry. I mean, that's the way it is with the finance of the club. Like, so, I mean, sorry. I mean, and then another player who probably makes sense, and if Barcelona were flush with cash, they would keep around just because they can. But now, and coming off some good news for Abde and Chadi Riyad, who will join preseason training next Monday. Abde helped lead Morocco to the U23 AFCON Championship. 3 goals, 3 assists in 4 matches, 6 key passes, 28 of 48 dribbles. That's 12 dribbles per match, and a 2.51 XG, which would have been good enough for second on Barcelona's team last season, by the way. And it's a small sample size against U23 African competition. So, of course, it's all skewed. But he was the top scorer and the top assist getter in the competition, assisting on the winning goal of the tournament in the 2-1 win against Egypt in the final. And Abde, as your 6th forward, I think is everything and more that you ask from a 6th forward. I mean, he is just lightning in a bottle. You put him on the left side, who knows? But it's another one of those things where it's like Abde's wages, because again, he came from Hercules at 19, so he was signed for cheap. His wages and his contract extension were cheap. He's a perfect situation for so many other clubs. And his wages are so low, by the way, I've heard, that other clubs are not, like, it's hard for Barca to ask 50 million euros for a player who makes as little as he does per week. You know what I mean? Like, he's not even, he doesn't even have the cachet in wage structure for other teams to kind of say, hey, we're definitely going to pay this transfer fee for this player that we only have to pay how much a week. You know what I mean? Like, that's chump change in the Premier League.
But we could use him, right? I mean, I think the thing about Abde at Osasuna, he had a very good, especially some great Copa del Rey games there, and he, like you just said, performed incredibly well with Morocco. And I feel like the left wing is always a spot here that we have. We've had it's kind of been a black hole since Neymar. Like, we haven't had any left wingers there, and we often found, in times of the season, especially when Pedri and Dembele were gone, like, you would just get not any offensive output on the left. And so Abde, I think, like you're saying, as a 6th-man option for that front attack is perfect. It's
weird, though, because if Xavi plays that box midfield, and then Ansu and Fermin Torres refuse to leave, they can both, in theory, cut inside. Like, in theory, they can be the inside forward in that box midfield. But Abde is not that. Like, Abde means you have to play a way. You have to play a 4-3-3. And once again, that means that is the younger pivot in that 4-3-3, because if that's the point, then really you're starting Abde, or Abde's really only getting substantial minutes when you're almost like negotiating your lineup based on him being on the left side, and you're also only doing that against low blocks and teams. But again, that would be a great break glass in case of a low block, because how often in the Liga do they see that? Like, they're going to see that behind closed doors on the first day of the season against Adafe, because Adafe is going to put 90 play. I mean, they were on the final day going to get relegated, and then they didn't. So that's a team that coming into this next season, it's only been 2 months. They're going to say, hey, we cannot get relegated. We got to start with at least a point. Let's get this thing going, and let's not let Barcelona score against, since we don't have any fans anyway. Let's just play as if we didn't have fans to impress, and let's just, shut everything down. Now, the right back spot is weird too, because next week in training, depending on how moves go, Barca could have 4 right backs. I expect Hector Fort to be sent down to U19s, but in theory, it could be Koundé, Juan Araujo, Serginho Dest, and Hector Fort, 4 right backs. Yet, going in order from that list, 1 is out of position, 1 is not good enough, 1 is probably never going to be good enough, and 1 isn't good enough yet in that order, that being Koundé, Juan Araujo, Dest, and Fort. And so it's again, a frustrating thing where Barcelona would love to go out and just buy a right back, just straight up buy a right back. But it is weird to me, though, too, with Adam, with that market on right backs, because you feel like if you only watch Barcelona or even only watch La Liga and you say, oh, man, there's got to be right backs, da-da-da-da. And then you look around and you're like, a year ago, Barcelona fans would have chewed their own leg off for Mazraoui. And now Bayern Munich are like, hey, we have this expensive right back we'd love to get rid of. Can someone take him? And now all these other teams, including Barcelona, can't even consider him because of his wages. And Bayern aren't going to be willing to pay part of those. Like, they want to get him off their books or they want to use him. And then the whole thing with Cancelo too. So it's like you have all these, you can not be the best right back in the world very quickly. I mean, we saw Alba, his whole stock in world football, 2015, 16, they're talking about him as one of the best. And then, he's forgotten, obviously, Liverpool. Like, I'm saying not Barca fans, I'm saying like pundits are like forgetting about Alba in that conversation. And then all of a sudden, right before he's about to leave, he becomes a legend again from the bench, and everyone's like giving him his flowers just as he's leaving and exiting the door.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the confusing part. I think, first of all, is like you do hear all these rumors, and you heard them at the end of last season about Koundé playing right back, not being happy, talking to Xavi about how he doesn't want to play that position. And then, I think there's two separate conversations to have, right? One is if Koundé wants to be solely a center back, does he start over Araujo and Christensen? I don't think, based off last season's performances, even the games when Koundé played as a center back, that you would really want that to happen. And then, in terms of right back options that we have, like you're saying, Serginho Dest, he with his confidence, with how low things have gotten, how his whole time at Barca has played out, that's not a tenable situation, and that's something I think for both sides we have to figure out how to get rid of. And then, Julian Araujo, again, he does not have nearly enough minutes to be someone who can start there. And so I feel like Koundé, has to be the one who slots in at that right back spot. And, if you're looking at the what we need and who we need to fill up with this roster this summer, I think right back is the position where do we need someone? Yes, but is that the position we're most likely willing to sacrifice and not get a new player? Also, probably yes, right? I think we're much more focused on getting that pivot in the next few months. And then, like you said, we're having such a hard time offloading any wages that even if we could find a player out there whose transfer value is something that we're willing to pay, it's going to be really tough to register them.
Yeah, I mean, I would argue that this is the last year, because this is now 2 straight summers. Like, I could go back and hear other shows where this is going to be the 3rd summer in a row where we have this conversation about a right back. We even have this conversation about like backup pivots and backup defensive midfielders. And Sergio Roberto is the name that I tell. Because again, I remind you, we never talk about him. Like, where is he going to play and how often is he going to play? And I think because everyone says, I hope that there's a better option. Like, why isn't there a better option? Because, because of that principle, that idea, we just forget that if there is no better option, he's going to play, especially if he's a captain, not because he's a captain, but because he's played right back for a long time. And again, we think that he's 38 years old. He's not. He's like, what is he, 32? Right? I think he's like, and that's it. And so he's going to play. He's going to be the quote-unquote backup right back. And Koundé, in theory, if hopefully healthy, is going to play, 70% of the time or more at right back. And then he'll play 20% of the games at center back. And then you'd hope 10% of the time he's either rotated, and you hope that he's not injured, but you almost expect him to be injured for, at least 2 or 3 games. So like take him out of 10% of matches and then hope that he plays 90% of other matches, and some of that 20 he's playing at center back, then Ronald Araujo is going to play at right back, and you won't have to worry about that. I mean, I would love it if Xavi really, pulls one over on us and Nico gets to stay in the squad as a right back. Like, that'd be awesome if Roberto only plays 10 matches this season. And because he lowered his salary, it's like I don't worry too much about that, having a guy make whatever he's going to make. I think 2.5 mil this year. I'm not worried about your captain who makes 2.5 mil playing, we'll say he plays 12 matches, right? Because there are 12 matches available for Sergio Roberto's level. Like that is a real thing. But there aren't 35 matches at Sergio Roberto's level. Like, that's the problem about Sergio Roberto.
Sergio is good for a big goal against Real Madrid, or at least a big game, right? I mean, he showed it last season. And so, as much as everyone kind of despises seeing Sergio out there, I mean, hey, he is good for a few shifts here and there. And the Copa del Rey games are a good spot for him to be in.
Yeah, I mean, I would love it if, in a perfect world, Sergio Roberto has that big goal or has that big moment when Barcelona just came off a huge emotional letdown in the Champions League or something. And by letdown, I mean just like they've had to win a Champions League game, and then all of a sudden now they're playing against Rayo Vallecano, or they're playing against Mallorca on the road. Legs are heavy. Or this season, that trip to Las Palmas, right? Like, Las Palmas is passing the ball around. Legs are heavy. They're coming off a Champions League night. And then here's Sergio Roberto, big goal, big time. Like, that's, in theory, the perfect situation for Roberto, and you'd love to see him in that role. And I do actually want to wrap up by talking about Araujo, that being Julian, and Dest, just for a second, because somebody did say they're like very similar players. And honestly, I've watched both of them a ton. I actually think they're the opposite. Dest's problem is that his defensive positional play for the right back in Xavi's system is nowhere near what it needs to be. And I've said many times, offensively still, you watch him, he is good enough offensively for that next tier down. Again, that level of maybe not AC Milan, but somewhere in that West Ham region, he is good enough of an attacking threat as a right back to play for them, especially if you've got one of those English center backs who are 34 years old, whose only job is to cover for their right back. Like, that guy is going to do Serginho Dest a world of good in a way that at Barcelona's level, when it comes to Champions League, it's not the case, because the level is just a bit higher than that when you're talking about the elite clubs in world football and the expectations of Barcelona's victories, right? When push comes to shove. And then in the case of Juan Araujo, he is almost the opposite in that defensively, I actually trust him quite a bit. He's a really good athlete, just a pure, terrific athlete. He's not like super fast, but he's always fast enough. He gets to the spot defensively. His positioning is pretty good. He doesn't turn his hips too quick. Like, he doesn't get caught very often. And his problem is his crossing. I mean, if you complained about Adama Traore's crossing a few years ago, strap in, right? Like, that's what we're talking about for Araujo. And there are flaws in his game on the offensive end. And if Barcelona doesn't have attacking, offensive-minded right back, you can live with it if it's Koundé, if it's a center back. But if you're saying that guy is a right back and he cannot get forward and cross the way that you're expecting a right back to do, he might be useful, but he doesn't have a long shelf life for Barcelona, especially if in the case of Araujo, the Galaxy did try him as this inverted defensive midfield. Like, they tried to bring him in from the right back spot sometimes, and the results didn't work. It wasn't working for him. And so my fear with him is that offensively, it's not where it needs to be. Like, and it's almost the opposite, where Xavi looks at Dest and goes, positionally or position play wise, we can't trust you defensively. And Araujo is, hey, position play wise, we can't trust you offensively. And there is room to grow for both. It's weird because, like, they're basically the same age. I said they're basically at the same part of their journey. They both have North American origins. Dest is from the Netherlands. What are we talking about? Except, he does play for U.S. nationally, of course, because of his father. But you get the point that it's like they have these connections to North America, and yet they're almost like the opposite players. So I had a comment that they were like very similar. There are some similarities in that they play for the U.S. and Mexico and North America for their national teams, but that's very to Moda I've seen. Maybe their level is similar, where neither are good enough for Barcelona, but they're both in that next tier down.
Different profiles, yeah.
Yeah, but maybe the next level, but profile-wise, very, very different.
And Galaxy are the local team to me, although I'm more of an LAFC fan. But, I saw Julian Araujo play quite a bit, and I agree with your characterization of him. But I think, in terms of what Xavi needs from that right back spot, Julian Araujo's player profile fits a lot better, right? We don't expect always a lot of offensive output from that right back spot, even though, I think that's a limiting factor, and it was with Koundé a lot of the season with, his connection with Dembele and with Rafinha. But I do think Julian Araujo has, a longer lifespan here at Barca, just because, we do need someone sound in that back spot.
Yeah, we'll have to see. I can see him very easily, very quickly going out on loan and never playing a game for Barcelona. Like, just the way that transfer went down for $4 million, and then as instant as Barcelona are looking to fill in another right back, like Fresneda would not be as connected to the club if they had even an iota of trust in Juan Araujo in the future. So I think that's already done and dusted. All right, last few points here. Again, this was a show where we didn't talk about Frankie de Jong, we didn't talk about Ron Araujo, and I will spend all season talking about Lewandowski and Pedri and the rest. We're really talking about the margin of the club, of the squad now, including Arnau Tenas, who was great with a capital G against England as Spain U21s lost in the final, because the English goalkeeper was somehow the only player who was better than Tenas in that final, and that's how that got done. And also, speaking of the Spain the U19s under Estelaga, Garrido, and Danny Rodriguez, as I mentioned late last week, they started for Spain this afternoon, actually with the U19s with Alex Valle on the bench, so that's why you aren't hearing about them in training. But they're also going to be, in the way that they were this past year, they'll be in training, first team training quite a bit. Garrido and Danny Rodriguez and Estelaga as maybe the third or fourth goalkeeper, depending on where Arnau Tenas winds up. But it's weird though, because goalkeeper's so hard. Like, if you could play two goalkeepers at the same time, right? Barcelona would carry three easy. Iñaki Peña, Arnau Tenas, and Ter Stegen, it would make sense. But today, Ter Stegen is coming off I would argue maybe the best season of his entire career. First time he ever
Yep.
won the Zamora Trophy. He was the best goalkeeper in Spain, arguably the best goalkeeper in world football on just pure numbers. Maybe not vibes, maybe not big matches, but just based on numbers alone, there's an argument for him. So if you're an out Tanas and you're like, well, Pena's the backup, and if he's not going anywhere, I mean, I can't. He's going to be 23, 24. Like, you can't just sit around. And he has proven, the good things for him is that he has proven that he's good enough to be the backup for Barca and to play somewhere else. Like, he's good enough to do that. He's proven that at international level all the way up through the U17s in Spain, all the way to U21s.
Yeah, totally. And I think that's just the hard part, right? Is that we have Ter Stegen, and he's not going to go anywhere for the next few seasons. And so I think it is his time to kind of probably go out somewhere else. But let's see. I mean, that's the crazy part about this summer, is that with just so much let's see. And so I'm kind of sitting here biting my nails, just waiting for all the cookies to crumble.
Yeah, and there's still plenty of cookies, plenty of goodies left to go, because the latest defensive midfield name is Oscar Zambrano, a 19-year-old for LTU Quito in Ecuador, was a starter for Ecuador at the U20 World Cup last month, where I assume Barcelona and a ton of other clubs scouted him. He would be, I mean, when you're talking about youth football players, like the number for him, now you're lowering that, you're going down in the list, right? Not only of Oro Romeo's and the top, the oldies will say, but now these young players too, the Federico Diaz, and now you're moving down that list even about the next generation and that's again, Pau Prim is in preseason training for a reason, because maybe he's the answer there. And you might have noticed that Vitor Roque, maybe by the time you're hearing this, is official with FC Barcelona, and Adam and I completely bottled this by not having him be the main focus of the show, but 30 million fixed fee, 26 million add-ons, including matches played, goals, trophies, 5 mil if he's in the top 3 of the Ballon d'Or, so basically 30 mil. Everything else, in theory, will pay for itself since he's a striker and expected to score some goals. So I'm not too worried about the numbers, but I will talk about the numbers, talk all about him. I'll probably have an expert on to talk about him as well, somebody who regularly watches him week in and week out. So don't you worry. Obviously, a signing of that caliber, if you're talking about a young player like that, is going to be somebody that I'm going to totally focus on for a whole show. I also, no matter what, have till January to worry about that. But that said, Adam, that would be a huge signing of intent for Barcelona, where I think in a normal year, if Barcelona were financially healthy, you're like, oh, great, they grabbed that player. But again, because of the financial situation they're in, the stakes of that transfer are just, they feel so high. But again, it's just like, to me, it's not that high, because it's 30 million fixed fee for a forward, a Brazilian forward. If that kid is the next number 9 for Brazil, Barcelona, even for 30 plus 26 plus 5, even for 60 mil, that is going to pay for itself hand over foot. I can tell you, every Brazilian player who he is like that, you're not the next Brazilian star until you are, agreed. But if he is the next, I mean, Barcelona unfortunately have a good history where I can name a bunch of them before I have to mention Kirsten, right? Or before I have to talk about those kind of levels of Brazilian players that have flopped.
Malcolm.
I get to talk about Rivaldo and Romario and Ronaldinho and Neymar, and I get to say those names first. And if he is the next one, 60 mil is, I mean, he's going to be worth 150 mil if he's the next one of those names.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Vitor Roque, he's like my honestly, one of the signings I've been most excited about in like 5+ years for Barca. I mean, and there's so many different levels to it, right? I think, like you're mentioning, there's just a love for Brazilian forwards at Barca. So that's like automatically puts them to a new stratosphere. But then also, I mean, when was the last time we had a center forward young prospect who was this hyped up? I mean, honestly, it's been a while since we have, and it's really good to see the team investing in that youth, especially when it's paired with, Lewandowski, who is, in his mid-30s now. And so, Vitor, I'm hoping that by the time this goes live, we have officially signed him, but it does look like it's just almost over the finish line. And I think if everything goes to plan, like you're saying, it'll be a steal of the last, 10 years, and he'll be a player who marks an epoch. I mean, I think we've all seen all of the highlight reels. If you've had a chance to watch any of his games, he's such a dynamic player, not selfish with the ball. And so I think he's just going to be, hopefully, one of the players who runs the 2020s for us.
Yeah, I mean, if people can let me know, hit me up with that name, because Ansu was an academy, Boyan was an academy, Alex Sanchez was like, what was he, 23? I mean, coming from Udinese, like it was nowhere near like that kind of potential or level or whatever. And he was also a winger. So I mean, it's got to be Brazilian Ronaldo. Like really like that's the answer. If you're talking about a Brazilian number 9 coming over, and he's coming over straight from Brazil, so there could be a learning curve, and he's going to probably come into January. So I mean, can Barcelona even financially get him registered? All you know is you got a player who Brazil is really excited about, who wants to play for FC Barcelona, and there are really to be a Brazilian forward, or even to be I mean, I'm looking at the names behind me as I'm talking to you. Like I'm looking at these names, and I'm like, to succeed at FC Barcelona as a forward, there are basically 2 requirements for the non-Spanish players. You've got to A, be from South America, and B, want to play for FC Barcelona. And if you do those 2 things, and you're a high-profile player signed for a high number, there is a good chance that you're going to succeed. And that seems to be that Barcelona don't really flop too often when that happens. So, I mean, again, I got to watch him 2 or 3 times already. And I also, again, I'm excited to really break down all the things he does. I have my opinions of the player, and it's one of those where, yeah, I don't know. It's a matter of how his goals will come for Xavi and for Barcelona, because I just feel like they might not come the way that you'd expect them to come, but yet he'll still score. Like, they won't come in a Brazilian way, but I still think that number could be very high in a few years. But I also think his role and success at Barca should not be judged by goals in the first 2 or 3 seasons, and he can still contribute something good. But it's a weird thing too, because then if he's 22, has only put in 10 goals or 12 goals a season for 2 or 3 years, he'll be too expensive, right? So he's like, it's a weird case too, because he's got to hit the ground running. If he's 19 and he's likely, I guess, making 8.5 to 10 mil per season, he's going to have to be scoring goals. I also don't know how they fit him in with Ansu and Fermin, and to kind of now cap the show off with this final thing here, Adam, for you. Yeah, you asked me, but I'll ask you in retort that I talked about Ansu. It sounds like that's died down. Is Ferran Torres? I totally get why he wouldn't want to leave, but he's a weird case because he's still kind of in his early to mid 20s. He still has so much career left for him. And if Xavi, I think he's an odd one where if Xavi pulls him aside literally tomorrow and says, "Hey, you are not in my plans. Vitor Roque is coming in January, and if we can figure something out, we'll have him sit out and he'll wait. And then we'll just like kind of bide our time. And you're not going to play for 3 seasons, or I think he has 3 years left on his deal, or maybe 2, whatever it is. Like, you will not play for 2+ years. Like, I mean, we're gonna eat that. Like, we want this kid to play. So, and we want to use this kid, and you're not in my plans. So, Ferran, what are you going to do? Like, we know we have to pay you. If you want to live in Barcelona, so be it. But it's, you know what I mean? Like, it's a difference between when Alex Song, when he came, and I believe he was 30 when he signed, and he was like, "That's a great number. I'd love to thank you for that number, and I would love to live in Barcelona in the twilight of my career. Awesome." And then when they're like, "Can you leave?" He's like, "No, I'm 33 years old. Whatever am I going? Continue to pay me." And even Umtiti at 28, after he had those injuries, like, it was something. But for Ferran, like, he's in theory entering the prime of his career. Is he going to be told you're not in the plans? And he's going to say, "I'm going to waste my 24-25 season the way I watch James Rodriguez do," because that's actually the next closest thing. James Rodriguez would be the only other example of a player, also Isco, that were basically 24. I mean, Ferran's even younger than them, though. They were like 25, 26, 27. I mean, Ferran legitimately is 23, 24 years old. Like, he's 22. Well, he was 22 last year. Yeah, like, he's in his early 20s. Like, is he really going to say, "I'm not in the plans, I'm going to just sit around" as a 23-year-old in Barcelona?
I don't think so, right? I mean, I think for him, especially with, that he's had so many high-profile games with Spain, I think he really is going to value playing in the Euros, playing in the World Cup, and so I don't think he can really just sit out, 2 or 3 seasons here. And I mean, what do we really know about the disposition of all these players? But Ferran Torres doesn't seem to me like the type of guy to really want to just sit out. It seems like he wants to get play. Now, that's kind of the circle that Laporta and Deco have to square off here, right? Which is that we have a lot of players who are getting paid a lot of money, are living in a beautiful city that we all love to visit, and so will they want to stay or leave? I mean, I think with Ferran, because of his age, like you mentioned, it's really a different category than someone like Umtiti. Like, he still has the prime of his career up, and I do think there are clubs in England who will want to sign him, even though his time at Man City, he didn't exactly get the most playing time. But I think he falls under a similar category as Dest, where it's just, their experience at Barca hasn't matched what they wanted. Fermin had a month when he first signed with us where he was really going off. And then after that, and slowly as the team kind of, slowed down in Xavi's first half season, he just stopped having confidence, right? I think Dest and Fermin, they're just players who've lost their confidence at Barca, and it's really hard to regain that once it's gone, because we're not talking about, a few weeks here or there where they haven't been performing. We're talking about huge amounts of time in the season. And so for him, I think he won't hold out and try and just sit on the bench, but who's going to buy him, and how much do we need to sell him for to actually make a difference on our books, and how the whole deal is amortized? It's really tough to figure out how it's all going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, we've all been in those situations. Like, even when the stakes are so much lower. Like, the last few seasons, I think I mentioned on the pod, like, I've tried to play for a club team that it just socially, it's just like the politics of the social stuff. It never meshed. Like, it didn't work. They felt like I was a bit too old for what they were looking for in the roles that they wanted to fit, and I felt like I could fit those. And it just personally, it never worked out. And we compete in leagues, and it'd be a thing. Now this summer, I'm on a club that is a little bit, maybe not talented or as good, but the role I'm in now, it's so much better, and I'm thriving in that role, and I'm comfortable in that role, and I'm happier in that role in a way that last season, while the team would have been better, I would have been in a smaller role for them. But I lied to myself for multiple seasons, saying, "Hey, like eventually they'll change their mind." You can't change people's mind. Like once something is done and it's buried, like how often in world football does a player get completely out? They're it's totally done, and then they're brought back into the fold. Like sometimes, like I feel like in Gareth Bale at Real Madrid, he was out on 6 different occasions, and I feel like on the second or third occasion it happened and he was brought back. Same thing with Isco. I felt like there was 6 different phases. There was phase 1 he was there, phase 4 he was back, and then and that was it. And then he was gone again. So I mean, yeah, there's a way back, but the question for Ferran Torres and Ansu is this so far gone for me at this place that it won't recover? As to the point where Xavi's like, these left wingers give me so little that I'm going to play a box midfield. I have to play a box midfield. We signed Gundogan, and I can tell you that Vitor Roque, having seen him, I think he's going to be a very comfortable player in that box midfield as well. So yeah, anyway, so we'll leave it there. Adam, where can people find you?
You can find me at Barca Breakdown on Twitter. You can find me on TikTok at Footy Fanatic. As always, I'm part of the Barça Buzz network, so please follow Barça Buzz. I think they do the best job in the game of making sure to just put out the most trustworthy news and to vet, so that not every story you hear is getting put on your timeline. So any of those 3 would be wonderful. Thank you so much for having me, Dan. Yeah,
I agree. Yeah, I mean, we reached out because Barça Buzz is, again, one of the news aggregators that I can say that I put some trust into. And so, yeah, and we're going to continue that partnership on, and as well as with Adam for Barca Breakdown. And follow him down in the show notes below and all that stuff, and watch his content throughout the season as well. As you're already flipping through your phone, just continue on and continue to watch his stuff as well. So that'll wrap it up. Again, Barca Breakdown and Barça Buzz for him. Twitter and Instagram at the Barca Pod. TikTok for us as well at the Barcelona Pod. Close Facebook group, Barcelona Podcast. Answer the questions. Let you in. Patreon, YouTube. For the second show this week, a little program note. If you're still here, you care about this. So second show this week, I will be away. So the podcast version will have a little preamble depending on the news of the week. Depending on what's happened, I'm probably going to talk about the former Barca legend in Luis Suarez later on that show. So I'm going to get into that. He passed away at the age of 88 this week. So I just want to talk about his legends a little bit. That'll be audio format only. Attached to that audio will be all about Ana Maria Martinez Sagi, who was the first woman on Barcelona's board back in the 30s, and her story. The Barca TV Plus did a whole thing about it. I watched that, enjoyed it, took my notes, and have dug in, and I want to tell her story as well. So that is all about her. That's going to be on the YouTube channel. So this is the podcast that's on the YouTube feed this week. The second thing this week is going to be all about her. So if you want that little other listening preamble, that'll be on Apple iTunes or Apple Podcasts or It'll be on Spotify or wherever you find your podcast. So that is your program note. So 2 different things kind of happening, both on audio, but the audio and visual thing about her story is going to be in both those places. And that is going to be the second thing that's going to come out this week. Okay. So that is all pre-edited, redone, and ready to go out. And most importantly, though, thanks so much for listening today to the show. Until next time, we'll talk to you soon. Of course, the Barca.